Go ahead and judge me, but answer one question first. What is a wife supposed to do when her husband acts like a frightened little girl every time a dog barks? My name is Vanessa Cole. I am 34, and I manage memberships at a private fitness club, so I know that fear only grows when people are allowed to feed it. I did not cheat on Ethan or abandon him when he needed me. I planned one surprise, put him in a padded training suit, and forced him to face the thing he had avoided for years. He went quiet afterward, rubbing his wedding ring the way he always did when he wanted me to feel sorry for him. Then my crybaby husband threw that ring toward my face and said I had let him spend 6 years loving a woman who wiped her feet on him. I was only trying to make him into the kind of man I could finally trust. On our third date, my heel broke outside an old planetarium during a winter storm. Ethan took off his scarf, wrapped it around my ankle, and carried my shoes while we walked 6 blocks through wet snow. He did not make a show of it. He simply matched his pace to mine. Afterward, he found a 24-hour diner, ordered the tea I liked, and dried my shoes under the heater by our booth. I remember watching his hands and thinking that this was what safety looked like. 6 years into our marriage, those same hands packed my lunch every morning, checked the oil in my car, and drove my mother to physical therapy twice a week. Ethan worked as a municipal systems engineer. He could find a fault in a water network from 3 numbers on a screen, yet he never remembered to tell me when something hurt him. He fixed. He carried. He went quiet. At first, I called that kindness. Later, it began to feel like something else. My father had also been called gentle. He stayed in the bedroom while my mother dealt with landlords and the neighbor's aggressive dog, then made tea afterward. Of course, everyone loved his calm. No one asked what it cost, the woman standing in front. I promised myself I would never become my mother. Ethan knew that. I told him before we married. He knew I needed a man who could step forward when life became ugly, not someone who waited for me to clear the room first. He said he understood. Then life gave him chances, and he kept stepping back. Dogs were the worst of it. When Ethan was 11, a Rottweiler got through a damaged gate and bit his shoulder. He still had 2 pale marks near his collarbone. I respected that history for years. I crossed streets with him. I checked whether restaurants allowed dogs before booking tables. I asked my sister Leah to put her German Shepherd in another room when we visited. Ethan never demanded those things, but his whole body did. His shoulders rose. His breath shortened. One hand went to his wedding ring, and his thumb rubbed the lower edge in slow circles. That gesture used to soften me. Eventually, it felt like an order. One Saturday morning, I found a paper bag in the pocket of his grey coat. Inside were small, dried liver treats. The smell filled our hallway before I closed the bag. Ethan came out of the bedroom and asked why I was searching his pockets. I told him I was checking clothes for laundry, which was close enough to the truth. When I held up the treats, he rubbed his ring and said they were part of something he was trying to handle. I asked whether that something involved finally acting like an adult around a Labrador. His face changed, only slightly. He wanted to know when I had started speaking to him as if he embarrassed me. That was Ethan's style. He never answered the question in front of him. He opened another, softer question and expected me to walk through it. I told him embarrassment was a result, not a choice. If he did not want me to feel it, he could stop giving me reasons. He placed the treats back in the bag, folded the top twice, and went to make my coffee. Of course he did. Ethan could end any argument by performing one small act of service and then looking wounded when it did not erase the problem. That afternoon, he replaced the cracked seal around our bathroom window. On Sunday, he prepared my quarterly membership report because I had spent the evening helping my mother. Monday morning, my coffee was beside the car keys at exactly 7:15. Useful. Reliable. Gentle. Those were good words for a husband until I needed to believe he could protect me. The incident with Leah's daughter made that need impossible to ignore. Leah held a birthday picnic for her 8-year-old, Sophie, at a lakeside park. Ethan arrived early with folding chairs, a cooler, and the chocolate cake Sophie had requested. He repaired one of the picnic tables because a bolt had come loose. When the wind lifted the paper decorations, he tied each one down. Every person there thanked him. Then an unleashed German shepherd ran across the grass. The dog was not growling, as Leah kept pointing out, but it was large, fast, and heading toward Sophie, who had frosting on both hands. She squealed and ran toward us. The shepherd ran faster. Ethan stood 3 steps away. His face emptied. One hand closed around his ring. I moved first. I caught Sophie around the waist, turned my body, and shouted for the owner. The dog stopped near my hip and began sniffing the cake box. A man came running with a loose leash and apologies. No one was bitten. No one even fell. That was not the point. The point was that I moved and my husband did not. Leah said Ethan had been trapped inside an old memory for 2 seconds. Brooke, my closest friend and a strength coach, called that an excuse. She believed fear survived because people protected it. Ethan carried the cooler back to our car after the picnic. He asked whether Sophie was all right, although he had watched her eat 2 slices of cake after the dog left. I told him she was fine because I had been there. He pressed his thumb under his ring and said he knew he had failed in that moment. For once, he named it correctly. He also said he needed me to understand that his body had reacted before his mind could catch up. He was working on it. He wanted time. I told him 6 years was time. He looked through the windshield. A wet paper plate was stuck beneath the wiper of the car ahead of us, lifting and falling in the wind. Ethan watched it for so long that I asked whether he planned to answer me. He said he had answered. I simply did not like the answer. That was partly true. Ethan always wanted credit for seeing a problem, even when he did not let me see the solution. He kept his plans inside his head and presented silence as patience. I had spent years guessing whether he was thinking, hiding, or surrendering. Brooke did not make me guess. On Monday, Brooke brought coffee to my office and asked how my little hero was doing. Then she began calling Ethan my housewife. I corrected her the first time. The second time, I smiled. By the 5th, I was using it too. It fit the version of him I carried around. My housewife packed lunches and remembered birthdays, yet changed sidewalks for barking dogs. He loved me with tasks and expected that to feel like protection. Brooke asked what I was going to do about it. I said Ethan claimed he was working on the fear. She wanted to know whether I had seen any proof. When I admitted I had not, she leaned against my desk and said private effort was often another name for no accountability. People changed when staying the same became more uncomfortable. It was exactly what I needed to hear. That evening, I found 3 Saturday parking receipts tucked into the storage slot of Ethan's car. Each one came from East Ridge Working Dogs, a training center 40 minutes outside the city. The dates covered 6 weeks. I took pictures before returning them. When I asked Ethan where he went on Saturday mornings, he rubbed his ring and said he had already told me he was working on something. I asked why a husband needed secrets to learn how not to panic. He said it was not a secret. It was private until he was ready to talk about it. Private. That was Ethan's favorite wall. He reminded me that after the picnic, he had asked for time without jokes or pressure. He named the exact moment when Brooke called him my housewife in front of Leah and I did not defend him. His voice remained flat, which made the accusation sound rehearsed. I told him the jokes would stop when the behavior stopped. That was moral clarity, not cruelty. If a grown man wanted respect, he could not demand it like a participation medal. Ethan's thumb stopped beneath the ring. He asked whether I still liked him. Not loved. Liked. For half a second, the question felt too exposed for our living room. Then he picked up my empty teacup and the old irritation returned. He was doing it again, turning a hard issue into a sad little domestic scene. I said I would like him much more if I could depend on him. He carried the cup to the sink. The next morning, my lunch was still packed, but there was no note inside the bag. I told myself that sulking was another feminine habit he needed to lose. East Ridge posted videos of German shepherds hitting the padded sleeves of men in bite suits. The dogs looked focused. Nothing about them asked permission. An assistant trainer named Ryan Dale appeared in nearly every clip, broad through the shoulders and comfortable with cameras. Brooke knew him from a confidence workshop at our club. She messaged him before I could decide whether I wanted her to. Ryan replied in 4 minutes. He said fear could be interrupted if the person had no room to escape it. He called it a breakthrough event. I liked that phrase because it made pressure sound generous. When I described Ethan's childhood bite, Ryan asked whether my husband was physically healthy. I said Ethan ran 3 times a week and had no injuries. Ryan said a controlled suit exercise could create a powerful before and after moment, especially if Ethan had already visited the center. Brooke asked whether we could film it. Ryan sent a laughing face and said cameras made people commit. That should have sounded careless. To me, it sounded masculine. For the first time in months, I had a plan that did not depend on Ethan telling me what went on inside his head. I would meet fear with something stronger. He would hate the first minute. Then he would thank me for the rest of our marriage. Before I could arrange it, Ethan embarrassed me again at the club's summer charity evening. The event took place on our rooftop terrace, where a rescue group brought 2 calm dogs in blue bandanas. I had approved the booth myself. Ethan could not object without proving everything I had said about him. He came directly from work in the navy jacket I bought for our anniversary. He had also brought the replacement card reader my staff needed because I mentioned at breakfast that ours had stopped connecting. He crouched beside the registration desk, repaired the settings, and refused the drink I offered because he said someone should stay clear enough to drive everyone home. When the younger rescue dog barked at a dropped tray, Ethan's shoulders tightened. His hand went to his ring. He did not leave, but he shifted behind one of the cocktail tables. Brooke saw it. She asked loudly whether my housewife needed a quiet room. 2 staff members laughed. I told her not to be mean, but my tone made it sound like part of the joke. Ethan looked at me instead of her. I could have ended it there. Instead, I wanted him to feel the distance between the man he was and the man the room respected. I told Brooke that Ethan needed one of her beginner classes, perhaps beside the woman recovering from knee surgery. More people laughed. Ethan asked whether I wanted him to go. His voice was low. That was all. No anger. No warning. I said leaving was exactly what everyone expected him to do. If he stayed, perhaps he could surprise us. So he stayed. He stood beside the desk while I explained that some men were built for confrontation and others for folding laundry. My staff knew Ethan packed my lunches, so the joke spread quickly. Ethan rubbed the lower edge of his ring once. Then he took a stack of empty glasses from a server whose hands were full and carried them inside. I read that as surrender. Near the service door, a man in a charcoal polo stopped Ethan and touched his shoulder. I recognized Rafael Ortiz, the owner of East Ridge Working Dogs, from the training center's website. He spoke to Ethan with the easy familiarity of an old colleague. Ethan nodded toward me. Rafael's expression tightened. I assumed Ethan had attended one consultation and talked about it until the owner remembered him. Quiet men often became talkative when they found someone willing to listen. Raphael later thanked Ethan for helping one of his handlers with a scheduling problem. I joked that systems were the only things my husband knew how to control. Raphael asked whether Ethan had agreed to have dogs at the event, then told me consent was not the same as control. Brooke pulled me away for photographs before I had to answer. At home, he placed my event folder on the console and asked why I enjoyed making him small in rooms where I needed to look important. I told him he was connecting 2 unrelated things. The jokes happened because he gave people material. My job required energy, and I could not spend every social event monitoring his comfort. He said he had repaired the payment system, driven my mother that morning, collected the cake, and stayed beside 2 dogs for 4 hours because the evening mattered to me. He did not list those things proudly. That made the list worse. It sounded like a bill. I told him marriage was not a scorecard. He said that was strange coming from a woman who measured his manhood every time he entered a room. For once, I had no immediate reply. Ethan loosened his watch and set it beside the console. His ring caught the light when he reached for the buttons of his jacket. There was a faint line of flour on one sleeve from carrying the donated cake. The jacket was the one I had chosen because blue made his eyes look warmer. For a few seconds, I saw the man outside the planetarium again. The man who had walked through snow at my pace without asking for credit. He looked tired, not weak. The thought remained open, just long enough to hurt. Then he asked if I had told Brooke about the picnic with Sophie. I said Brooke was my friend. He asked whether being my friend gave her the right to rename him. I picked up his watch and placed it in the tray by the door. A man who wanted a different name could earn one. The next morning, I confirmed the session with Ryan. Ryan scheduled it after hours while Raphael attended a certification event. He said the center's German shepherd, Kaiser, was steady on the sleeve and looked dramatic. Ryan had watched one of Ethan's early appointments from a distance and called him tense but functional. That was enough information for me. It proved Ethan had started but had not finished. It also proved he had hidden the scale of the problem from me. Ryan asked if Ethan knew about the session. I said it was a surprise. He paused. Then Brooke mentioned the video and the audience we could bring. Ryan's caution disappeared. He asked whether my club might tag East Ridge when we posted the clip. I said that depended on the result. He liked that answer. I would call it an early anniversary surprise, blindfold Ethan for the drive, and let Ryan describe the padded suit as part of a trust exercise. Brooke, Leah, and 4 friends would wait behind the barrier with their phones ready. No escape, no private wall, no time to produce another careful explanation. Ethan would have to act. For 2 days, I became the wife he wanted. I sat beside him on the couch and kissed his cheek when he placed coffee by my keys. None of it was false. I believed one obstacle stood between us, and I was brave enough to remove it. On Thursday night, Ethan asked what had changed. Soft curiosity. That was his way. He studied me as if kindness from his wife required an inspection report. I said I was tired of fighting and wanted to do something romantic. His thumb moved beneath his ring. He asked whether romantic meant private. I almost laughed at the precision of it. I told him of course it would be private. The people attending were our people, so I did not count them as an audience. He said he would like that. Then he went to the bedroom and returned with a small envelope. Inside were 2 tickets to the planetarium's winter exhibition, booked for the night of our anniversary. He had remembered the place where we first felt safe together. He said he wanted to start the evening there and let me choose what came after. I thanked him. The tickets cost less than 1 dinner at the club, but the idea was sweet. That is the right word. Sweet. I needed more than sweet. The morning of the surprise, Ethan made my favorite cinnamon toast and packed an overnight bag. He rubbed his ring and said we could stay somewhere afterward and talk without distractions. I approved. After the exercise, I pictured him exhausted and grateful, holding me as if I had returned something he thought was lost. Brooke texted that everyone was in position. Ryan sent a photograph of Kaiser wearing a wide working collar beside the field gate. The dog looked larger than in the videos. That was good. Ethan needed the moment to be large enough that he could never crawl back inside the old excuse. I tied a black silk scarf over his eyes in the passenger seat. It was the same scarf Ethan had bought during a weekend in Montreal. He smiled when he recognized the fabric and asked whether he should be nervous. I said only if he did not trust his wife. His smile faded, but he left the scarf in place. During the drive, his thumb kept touching the ring. I thought he was preparing for romance. Whatever happened on the field would shock him, but shock was part of the cure. At East Ridge, Ryan greeted Ethan as a stranger and described the protective clothing as a sensory trust drill. Ethan asked whether I was staying beside him. I said I would be close enough to watch. That answer was true. Inside the changing bay, Ryan helped him step into the thick padded trousers and jacket. The suit smelled of canvas, dog, saliva, and strong detergent. Ethan touched the stiff sleeve and asked what kind of romantic surprise required protection. Ryan laughed. I laughed too. I told Ethan he thought too much and trusted too little. If he wanted the old version of us back, he had to let me lead for once. He went still. Then his thumb rubbed the ring beneath the padded cuff. Ryan said all jewelry had to come off before the gloves were secured. Ethan pulled the ring free. A pale band circled the skin underneath. He held the ring between two fingers and asked me to put it somewhere safe. I told him the suit had an inner zip pocket and pushed it open for him. Ethan placed the ring inside himself. He closed the zipper slowly and pressed his palm against it. I assumed he was afraid of losing the ring. Ryan lowered the padded hood over Ethan's head but left the blindfold beneath it. Together, we guided him through the side door. His steps were short because the suit was heavy. The field smelled of wet grass and warm dust. Kaiser barked from behind the far gate. Ethan stopped. The sound changed his breathing at once. I could hear it through the hood. He asked what kind of animal was on the field. I told him it was the animal that had controlled our marriage long enough. Behind the barrier, Brooke made a small, excited sound. Leah told her to lower the phone. One of our friends whispered that Ethan could hear them. Ryan grinned at me and raised his hand toward the dog handler near the gate. Ethan turned his covered head in my direction. He asked whether there were people watching. I could have removed the blindfold then. I could have ended the surprise before it became a test. Instead, I said people who loved him were there to see him win. His padded hand rose toward the place where his ring usually sat. The glove found nothing. Then he lowered the hand and said he understood. His voice was quieter than the field. I heard surrender. Ryan reached under the hood and pulled away the scarf. Ethan blinked against the late sun. First he saw the grass, then the barrier, then the phones held above familiar faces. Brooke was smiling. Leah was not. Beyond them, a camera on a small tripod pointed directly at the center of the field. Kaiser barked again. Ethan turned toward the far gate. The dog strained forward, dark across the muzzle, ears high, eyes fixed on the padded sleeve. Ethan's mouth opened once. No sound came out. I walked backward until I stood beside Ryan. Ethan asked me to tell him this was not the surprise. I said it was more than a surprise. It was the day he stopped letting an animal decide what kind of husband he could be. He looked at Leah. She lowered her phone and said she had thought we were coming to support a planned training session. Brooke told her not to ruin it. Our friends shifted along the barrier, uncertain but still watching. Ethan's eyes returned to me. He asked whether I had lied about the anniversary evening, the privacy, and wanting the old version of us back. I told him I had done all of this because I wanted us back. A strong marriage needed two strong people. I could not keep carrying him through every hard moment. Ryan said the exercise was controlled and the suit was designed for it. He gave Ethan a quick explanation of how to present the padded arm and stay upright. Ethan listened without interrupting. When Ryan finished, Ethan adjusted the sleeve fastener near his wrist with one exact pull. Ryan glanced at him. I thought fear had made Ethan obsessive again. The handler at the far end raised one arm. Kaiser stopped barking and stood rigid beside his leg. Ethan asked who had approved the exercise. Ryan said he had. Then Ethan asked where Raphael was. The question irritated Ryan. He told Ethan to focus on the dog, not office politics. I assumed Ethan remembered Raphael from the rooftop and wanted the kinder trainer instead. Brooke called across the field that I had brought him there to become a man, not ask for another father. Ryan laughed. The sound pulled a few nervous smiles from the barrier. I laughed too. Ethan looked at me for several seconds. There were tears in his eyes, but his breathing had slowed. I decided those tears proved the surprise was reaching the part of him words never could. He asked whether I enjoyed this. I told him I would enjoy never having to stand between him and the world again. He looked down at the padded arm. His shoulders settled. One foot moved behind the other, giving him a wider base. Ryan noticed. So did the handler. I saw a frightened man copying instructions because he finally understood that I would not rescue him. The handler released the line. Kaiser crossed the field in seconds. The first impact sounded like a heavy bag hitting a wall. The dog's front paws struck Ethan's chest. Its jaws closed around the thick right sleeve. Ethan rocked backward but did not fall. He turned with the dog instead of pulling away. Grass tore beneath his boots. Brooke shouted with excitement. Ryan clapped once and yelled for Ethan to stay with it. I covered my mouth, laughing because the sight was more dramatic than the videos. My careful husband, buried inside padded canvas, finally had something real hanging from his arm. Kaiser growled around the sleeve. Ethan's face tightened, but he kept his balance. He did not strike the dog. He did not scream. He shifted his weight, gave the sleeve the correct angle, and waited for the release command. For one breath, Ryan stopped smiling. The handler called the dog off. Kaiser released at once and returned across the field. Ethan remained standing. Applause rose behind the barrier. One friend slapped the fence. Brooke told the live stream that fear had just lost. Ryan put an arm around my shoulders and said we had given Ethan a memory stronger than the old one. That was the exact result I had promised. I walked onto the field while Ethan removed the padded hood. His hair was wet at the temples. A tear had reached the edge of his jaw. I smiled because I wanted him to see pride instead of pity. I told him to look at himself. He had done it. He had stood his ground because I had refused to let him run. Ethan said nothing. His hand moved to the small zipper inside the suit. He opened it and removed his wedding ring. The metal rested in his palm while his thumb rubbed its lower edge. I assumed he was overwhelmed. Brooke came closer with her phone and asked me to say the line again for the video. Ryan laughed beside her. I faced the camera, put one hand on Ethan's padded chest, and said the sentence I had been waiting weeks to say. I told everyone that Ethan had not needed therapy, privacy, or another excuse. He had needed a woman brave enough to make a man out of him. The field went quiet behind the fading applause. I was certain I had won. A truck door slammed near the main building. Rafael Ortiz crossed the gravel toward us. He still wore the black trousers and white shirt from the certification event. His jacket hung over one arm. He looked first at Kaiser, then at the bite suit, then at Ryan. He asked why the center's dog had been used after hours with guests on the field. Ryan said it was a controlled demonstration and no one had been hurt. He pointed toward the camera and added that the clip would be good for East Ridge. Rafael did not look at the camera. He looked at Ethan. He asked whether Ethan had agreed to this audience. Ethan opened his hand. The ring lay in the center of his palm. He said he had agreed to finish what Vanessa had started. I stepped between them and explained that Ethan had been hiding his visits to the center. I said I had only accelerated work he was too ashamed to discuss. The result was standing in front of us. He had faced the dog. He was safe. Everyone had seen it. Rafael asked Ryan which dog Ethan had worked with during the previous suit exercise. Ryan's mouth closed. Rafael answered for him. It had been Kaiser. Rafael said Ethan had started at East Ridge 4 months earlier. The first 2 sessions had taken place outside the fence because he could not enter while the dogs were working. He returned every Saturday. He learned to stand near a calm dog, then walk beside one, then hear barking without leaving. 3 weeks before my surprise, he had completed the same controlled sleeve exercise with Kaiser. The treats in his coat were not random. He used them during his weekly work with a shelter dog. The parking receipts did not mark 3 hesitant consultations. They were the 3 Saturdays he had forgotten to pay through the center's monthly account. Rafael had not remembered a nervous visitor at my rooftop event. He knew Ethan because they had spent 4 months working together. Kaiser had not become calm after sensing Ethan's fear. The dog recognized him. Ethan had not copied Ryan's fastener check or foot position. He already knew both. Each detail arrived from something I had held in my own hands. The paper bag. The receipts. The ring moving beneath his thumb. Rafael's hand on his shoulder. Ethan asking for privacy. Nothing new entered the field. The old facts simply stopped obeying me. I pressed my nails into the canvas over Ethan's chest and told Rafael that private practice did not change what happened at Sophie's picnic. Ethan had failed when his family needed him. He had shut me out afterward and expected me to applaud a secret process I could not see. Ethan did not argue. He said I was right about that part. He had hidden the training because he did not trust me with the slow, embarrassing stage of it. He had chosen silence over one more honest fight. That silence had left me alone with the worst picture of him. I held onto those words. They were clean. They were mine. I said a wife could not support work she was not allowed to know existed. If he had told me, none of this would have been necessary. Ethan asked whether I would have protected the secret or turned the first session into a joke for Brooke. My answer did not come fast enough. He looked toward the barrier. Leah had stepped away from Brooke. Our 4 friends no longer held their phones high. One had already turned hers face down. Ethan said he had planned to tell me on our anniversary. The planetarium tickets were the beginning. Afterward, he wanted to take me to East Ridge, introduce me to the shelter dog, and ask whether we could try marriage counseling before contempt became the only language left between us. The overnight bag in our trunk had not been packed for a hotel celebration. It contained enough clothes for him to stay with his brother if I laughed at the request. That fact was not hidden either. I had asked about the bag. I had simply supplied the answer I preferred. Brooke lowered her phone. I said her name, expecting her to remind everyone that the exercise had worked. She looked at the dark screen and stepped backward without answering. Ryan tried to recover the room. He said Ethan had performed perfectly, the dog had followed commands, and the video already had hundreds of viewers. He suggested we stop turning a successful confidence exercise into a marriage argument. Raphael held out his hand for Ryan's center keys. Ryan stared at him, then dropped the key ring into his palm. He removed the East Ridge patch from his shirt, took the tripod, and walked toward the side gate without looking at me. I called after him that the live stream belonged to us. He kept walking. The person who stayed was Ethan. He pulled open the front of the padded jacket and stepped out one shoulder at a time. Without the suit, he looked smaller, but not weak. His shirt clung to his back. The pale scar near his collarbone showed above the neckline. I told him we could go home and speak privately. I said the surprise had gone too far only because Ryan had treated it like content. I could admit that much. We had both made mistakes, and a marriage should be stronger than one ugly afternoon. Ethan rolled the ring between his fingers. He asked whether I remembered the 6 weeks he drove my mother to therapy, the night he protected her apartment from frozen pipes, and the tracking sheet that saved 70 club renewals. I remembered all of it, but said those things did not answer the problem between us. Ethan said they answered the only question he still cared about. He had spent years showing me what kind of man he was, and I kept rejecting the answer because none of it looked loud enough. I told him packing lunches and driving an older woman to appointments did not make a wife feel protected. A man could be useful and still behave like a girl when danger appeared. Leah made a sound behind the barrier. Not a word, just breath pushed through her nose. Ethan's thumb stopped moving. For 6 years, that stillness had always ended the same way. He washed a cup, fixed a hinge, waited for me to calm down. I mistook the pause for the old surrender and stepped closer. I told him he was crying after succeeding. I asked how long I was supposed to celebrate a crybaby for doing one thing men were expected to do without applause. Ethan lifted his hand. He tossed the ring toward me. I raised my arm. The ring struck the back of my fingers, glanced against my cheek, and dropped into the grass between my shoes. No one moved to pick it up. Ethan said he had stopped being afraid of Kaiser 3 weeks earlier. Today, he had stopped being afraid to leave me. His voice never rose. He said I was right that he should have confronted me sooner. He should not have let coffee, repaired windows, and packed lunches speak for him. Those things were love, not a boundary. His mistake was believing I would eventually recognize one without needing the other. Then he said the line I had repeated in my hook because it still angers me more than the ring. He said he had spent 6 years loving a woman who wiped her feet on him and called the dirt proof that he belonged on the floor. I told him that was dramatic. I had pushed him because no one else would. I had forced him to discover strength he already possessed. Raphael said that was not what he had watched. He pointed to the blindfold still lying beside the field gate. He said Ethan had entered a controlled program by choice, at his own pace, and had succeeded. I had removed his choice, lied about the audience, and handed his fear to strangers for entertainment. The dog had not tested Ethan's character. I had. I looked toward Leah for help. She came through the barrier, but she walked past me. She took Ethan's overnight bag from our trunk and placed it beside him. Then she said she had spent years thanking him for helping our family while listening to me call that help feminine. She would not do both anymore. Our friends followed her toward the parking lot. No one announced a side. They simply stopped standing beside mine. Ethan changed out of the padded trousers in the side room. When he returned, Raphael had found the ring in the grass and placed it inside the open right glove of the hanging suit. Ethan did not touch it. He picked up his bag, thanked Raphael, and left with Leah. Brooke was gone before I turned toward the barrier again. 3 days later, a divorce petition arrived with instructions for the first mediation appointment. Ethan moved into his brother's spare room, and the empty hook beside our front door stayed empty. Our joint account closed after the household bills were divided, leaving me to pay for the condo I had insisted we could afford. Leah kept inviting Ethan to Sophie's school events, while my messages to the family group received answers from our mother only. Ryan deleted the live stream after East Ridge removed him, but copies of my laughter kept moving through the club's private chats. Brooke changed her schedule to another floor and stopped bringing coffee to my office. I still do not accept that wanting a strong husband made me cruel. I wanted certainty. I wanted a man who would step forward before I had to ask. Ethan had been stepping forward for years, only never in the direction I respected. When he finally did it my way, the courage I demanded was the courage that took him out of my life. Raphael mailed the ring back inside a small padded envelope because I never returned to collect it from the suit. The dog released Ethan on command, but his wedding ring still lies in my desk.